For some reason, it reminds me of Bioshock. Ah! I know nothing about this franchise. Generic Control in the Deck Goes Boo here, back with another game theory video, and today we are doing the very first Bendy and the Ink Machine game theory video that they did, which is how Bendy exposes Disney's cartoons, which I'm not even sure what that means. I know nothing about Bendy and the Ink Machine. I think it's like a horror-ish game. I'm not really sure. I finally finished up with all the Minecraft and Five Nights at Freddy's theories as they kept uploading new ones. You took reaction last one, which was Five Nights at Freddy's, the newest video that came out last week. I'll leave it right up there. Also linked down below in the description. Also in two playlists on my channel with all of my other FNAF theories and all my game theory videos. This video will probably be in another playlist, so it's definitely gonna be in the game theory playlist. I have a playlist with all my game theory reactions, going to chronological order, binge watch through all of them, but I know nothing about Bendy and the Ink Machine. It's between Bendy and the Ink Machine and Poppy Playtime. I saw a lot of people commenting for both, but I saw more for Bendy and the Ink Machine. I do read art comments, at least them down below. This is gonna be my first time seeing anything related to Bendy and the Ink Machine, so it's gonna be quite interesting, but I do read art comments, at least them down below. Also, shout out to the patrons, because none of this would be possible was not for them. $3 a month get you all my reaction videos a day early. It's like, right, it's usually 16 videos. Past couple weeks, it's like 18, 19 videos, which is just insanity, but I do read art comments, so at least them down below. Also, we are so close to 100,000 subscribers. But let's go ahead, jump into how Bendy exposes Disney's cartoon. Okay.
Hocus pocus.
I know nothing about this franchise. I think it's a scary game, right?
Concentrate.
Concentrate.
I
What?
will now bear the naked truth.
Nice. Also, this video is rather old. The truth of Bendy. Are they still coming out with Bendy and the Ink Machine videos or no? Edited by a small army? Is that an actual, like
Hello,
name?
Internet. Welcome to Game Theory.
Oh, it's so old.
You've heard of the talkies.
Oh, it's so old.
Well, this show pioneered the talkie too muchies. And today we're flashing back to a simpler time. A time before video games and YouTube. Before Marvel and Star
Steve
Wars.
Rogers.
A time
Haven't
before,
seen Star Wars.
dare I say it, fidget spinners.
Still,
That's right,
I've never
theorists.
used a fidget
Today
spinner,
we're flashing
ever.
back to the years
Fun
between
fact for you.
1920 and 1940.
Ooh.
A truly
There
simpler
was a-
time in which the U.S. just so happened to be thrown into an economic crisis during the Great
Yeah.
Depression, and Hitler rose to power overseas, thus
Yeah.
sparking the beginnings of World War II. But hey, look on the bright side, at least there was no such thing as FNAF. In such
Might just have
dark
to
times,
blur
the
that little
world was in
segment there.
desperate need of entertainment. They needed a reason to laugh.
That's,
And thus,
Charlie Chaplin, right?
animation
Oh,
exploded
and that's
onto the
Steamboat
scene. I
Willie.
mean, sure, animation had been
Who's
around
in
since
the public domain.
1900, and if you really want to get technical, could date back as far as the invention of the thaumatrope from 1825, but it was this era, the 1920s to the 1940s, when history entered what's known as the golden age of animation. And it's this world
That
where we
early?
find ourselves in for today's theory. The world of Bendy and the Ink Machine.
Wow,
Now, if you haven't
okay,
been watching
it's
a lot of
old,
Let's Plays lately, this one might have slipped past you. It's a small indie
I've
title
heard of
told
it.
in 5 parts, because at this point it's always 5 parts. with the
That's,
first 2 currently available and a
is that The
third
Walking
one on
Dead
the
or
way
is that The Last
shortly.
of Us?
There isn't a whole lot to do in every chapter, but what it lacks in gameplay, Bendy makes up for in style and story, putting you into the throwback world of the earliest days of animation. In the game, you play as Henry, a retired cartoonist
not another
invited to
Henry.
come back to his old studio
The
after
FNAF.
30 years. The invite comes from a man named Joey Drew, your former boss
Dude has
at the company
2
Joey
first
Drew
names, but
Studios.
okay.
Inside, you find that everything is abandoned, and by putting the bits of lore together
Who's laughing?
collected from audio logs sprinkled throughout the game,
The
you learn
dancing
that
demon?
Joey was experimenting with ways of bringing his cartoon creations to life. And apparently,
For some reason, it
his
reminds me of
experiments were a
Bioshock. Ah!
success. The company's signature character, a little devil named Bendy, is now
What do you mean, devil?
alive and very dangerous.
Wait,
you also
what-
learn that
the-
some employees, like Sammy Lawrence, Joey Drew's music department director, worship these living cartoons as gods,
That's
forming what seems to
Cthulhu.
be a good old-fashioned cult.
We love those.
Must honor their savior. I must have him notice me. For our Lord is
Senpai, notice
calling
me.
to us, my little sheep. The time of sacrifice is at hand.
Besides
It
Bendy,
does give me
there's also
Bioshock
Boris
vibes.
the Wolf walking around, and Bendy's
What?
girlfriend Alice Angel, who looks like she'll be playing a bigger part in Chapter 3. And honestly, that's about it for now. Now, many of you have been
Well,
asking me on
has he
Twitter,
played
at
it?
MattPatGT, as well as during GT Live, to do a theory about this game, to try and predict what's
Well,
going on. But after doing the research,
Isn't
I
that-
think I can do you
yeah,
one better.
that's,
Instead of just trying to put together a rough
is
plot
that Dumbledore or
summary,
is that
I think
Gandalf?
I can reveal the true identity of the main
one of the two.
character
I
of
can
the
promise
game,
you that.
Joey Drew, the mastermind animator obsessed with bringing his creations to life.
And
because
he
here's
did.
the thing, I believe he's inspired by a real person, and that the
Who?
events happening in the world of Bendy actually mirror events that occurred at one of the top animation studios during this golden age of animation. Joey Drew
Reminds me of,
in-game is
what,
playing
who
the
killed-
role of perhaps the single
Walt
most
Disney?
important
Oh.
pioneer of animated entertainment, a man whose name has sadly been almost completely forgotten by history, a man
it's not.
by the
What?
name of Max Fleischer.
Hey, that's
now,
not
seeing Bendy
Walt
and
Disney.
Horace, you probably immediately think of Walt Disney and the old Mickey Mouse cartoons.
Sure.
I mean, we're all trained to think that Walt Disney was the pioneer of this style of animation, that
I mean,
he's
I
the
didn't think
guy
that,
who
but
made cartoons into what
the
they
only
are
name I know.
today, but that's because he purposely planted those thoughts into your head. And that's not an exaggeration. If you read about Walt Disney, you start to learn that he was a master of marketing himself.
Oh,
taking
yeah.
credit for things that weren't his idea to begin with,
Most
and using
Disney
the
stories,
media
yeah.
to sell his story to listeners who didn't know any better.
Obama.
No, if you're looking for the true masterminds responsible for helping to shape the early world of
Yeah, I've never even
animation,
heard of
it
Who
was
Killed
Max
Roger Rabbit
Fleischer,
in the,
his brother
nostalgia
Dave
video.
Fleischer, working from their animation studio in New York.
Learned a lot about cartoons.
Way back in 1914,
I wasn't a kid that really
when Walt
watched
was still
cartoons.
only a teenager, Max Fleischer invented rotoscoping, a technique that allowed an artist to trace over live-action footage to create more realistic-looking animated movements.
Whoa.
This was a huge
With Keanu
advancement,
Reeves? What?
allowing cartoons to be drawn faster and with a higher quality of movement. It also gave rise to the first of the major Fleischer Brothers series known as Out of the Inkwell, in which live-action footage of Max was combined with his animated characters as they literally came to life off
wait,
the
no,
page
that's kind
to
of, that
interact
reminds
with
me
and
of
explore
Alan
the
Becker
real world.
videos.
But the Fleischers didn't stop there. Ask anyone what the first cartoon to feature synchronized sound and music was, and they'll usually say Steamboat Willie, Mickey
Who asked
Mouse's
that question?
monumental debut from back in 1928. But it was Max, not Walt Disney, who was the first to combine sound and animation in his series of shorts called Song Cartoons.
I mean, yeah, silent
back
movies
in
were a thing, weren't they?
1924, 4 years earlier than Steamboat Willie. These were those famous Follow the Bouncing Ball sing-alongs that you've probably seen or heard of. Well, you have Max Fleischer to thank for those. But according to rumors, when Steamboat Willie launched, Walt Disney, despite being 4 years late to the party, actively tried to discourage reporters from mentioning these past sound videos in their articles,
Nice.
thus allowing Disney to claim all the credit for being the first to use these techniques. And
No,
thus began the animation feud with the Disneys on the West Coast and
Hollywoodland?
Hollywoodland, going up against Max and his brother
Hollywoodland.
back east in New York. An animation feud that would last in the industry for the next 2 decades. At their prime, the Fleischer Studio would be a premier producer of animated cartoons for theaters, with Walt Disney
mean,
Productions being their chief
were they
competition.
really-
And
yeah, they were
yet,
competition.
as I'm
They
sure you
could
can
have both
guess,
been
it was the
successful, couldn't they?
Disneys who came out on top. Their marketing smarts and location in California amongst the growing movie
True.
industry ultimately buried Fleischer's business and erased his name from the annals of animation history.
So Disney just
What does
outgrew
any of
them.
this have to do with an incomplete indie game hit? Well, first, think about what you just heard. Even with animation in its infancy, Max Fleischer's work with Out of the Inkwell was literally bringing animated characters
To life.
into the real world.
Yeah,
just like
interacting
Joey
with
Drew
them.
and his ink
And it has to
machine,
do with
a man
ink,
who
like, of all
literally wrote
things.
a book on bringing images to life, as we see in Chapter 1's The Illusion of Living. It's also clear that Joey Drew's animation studio has fallen to ruin by the time your character visits it, a detail that
big
reflects
building.
Max Fleischer's eventual bankruptcy, ultimately losing his business to Walt Disney, the man who stole the credit
Did
from
they just
him.
declare bankruptcy, or did they, like, get bought
Get what
for
Joey's
cheap?
plan is for this company. The animation sure aren't being finished on time anymore.
And think about it. If this game was truly meant to parallel Walt Disney animation, then why would it happen in an abandoned studio? And why would the characters be out for revenge?
Oh,
I mean, Disney
why?
won everything. Disney runs the world. Max Fleischer was the one who was left with a crumbling business and a name lost to obscurity. So if there's anyone out there who would have a chip on their shoulder and
It'd
be
be-
out for revenge, like you see Joey Drew and Bendy and the Ink Machine,
What?
well, it would be him. But we're not even to the good stuff yet. One look at Bendy's design, and I'm sure you
Why does it
immediately
look
think
so,
of
like,
Mickey Mouse,
happy?
right?
No,
Tall,
not at all,
mischievous
actually.
character
I don't
with
think
big
of-
white gloves. Well, Max Fleischer had his version of the character too. Bimbo, a tubby black and white cartoon dog complete with big white hands. One of the 5 main recurring characters that his studio would produce during their run. A character whose personality is
where-
a much more
that-
direct
it's
parallel
Betty
to
Boop, right?
Bendy
That's
than Mickey's
that one?
is. Mickey, in his early cartoons,
The girl?
tends to be the good guy, the one who's having to fight back against bullies. But Bimbo is actively a troublemaker. So much so that one of his most infamous appearances, 1930s Swing You Sinners, is entirely about
What was the,
undead
like,
spirits
release? Like, how much
punishing him
time
for
went
his
into making
misdeeds.
these?
Chickens you used to steal.
Like, do people, like, rewatch them?
He's constantly chasing women.
That's Betty Boop.
Bimbo's behavior just seems to be the stronger match for what you'd expect from a little devil like Bendy. And the parallels aren't just with Bimbo. There's also a direct relation between Max's real-life characters and Bendy's girlfriend, Alice Angel. Now, admittedly, we don't know too much about Alice.
She probably makes an appearance
in Chapter 2 through one poster and one audio log. But what we do know is that she appears to be a female devil creature like Bendy, who somehow became an angel, like a Looney Tunes-esque Lucifer who happens to sing. We also know that she's drawn to be beautiful. Not only does she just physically look pretty, but she's also wearing a tight black halter-top dress. Something that, back during this era of animation, would have been seen as sexy and scandalous. We also know in the audio log that Sammy Lawrence expects her to surpass Bendy's popularity.
People really seem to enjoy my Alice Angel voice. Sammy says she may be as popular as Bendy someday.
Long story short, this ain't your mama's Minnie Mouse, but it is your mama's Betty Boop, one of the Fleischer Studios' most famous creations.
I didn't know.
Betty Boop matches exactly with Alice. She's a singer who was introduced into the cartoons to be Bimbo's love interest, surpassed him to become
what
way
in the
more
world?
popular, and was considered to be an attractive, sexy character back in the day. So much so, in fact, that her design had to be toned down in 1934 when the government started cracking down on the sexual content in films.
They cracked down on Betty Boop?
Black halter-top dresses. Well, eventually red, but, you know, this is black and white cartoon.
That makes sense.
And if you're wondering how a human woman would become the love interest of a cartoon dog, well, get this. Betty Boop actually started as a dog. A French poodle, in fact. It's kind of disturbing, really. Her long dog ears became her long hoop earrings. Ugh, it's kind of gross. Anyway, she's also the matching species of her love interest, just like the Ink Machine's two little devils. But it's stylistically where we see these two worlds
Angel
collide
Devils,
the most. During Fleischer's war against Disney, two styles of animation developed. Disney's West Coast style was much more family-friendly, with characters behaving much more realistically and in settings that happened to be
and then the East Coast style is going to be like slapstick.
Max's work was much grittier, twisted, aimed at more mature audiences with character bodies contorting like rubber bands. It was a looser animation style that felt like improv, where characters aren't so tightly bound to the rules of reality. It was a lot like the YouTube animations that you see from channels like Gonzo SSM, Psychic Pebbles, Oni NG, and of course,
I've heard of Ego
settings
Raptor.
were grungier, taking place in cities and sewers, inside buildings rather than outdoors, and the topics dealt with were racier. Just like Betty Boop, a character made to be a sex symbol that has literally persisted across generations. In short,
that apparently people still care about.
Sometimes even hellish imagery. And this is the aesthetic that seems
I'm sorry, was that an actual fire truck instead of a water truck? It shot fire?
Confined space filled with industrial pipes and dripping ink, dark and shadowy. It's
who's controlling that?
A hell on earth. And yet, for all the jump scares, what's creepiest in
is
the
it
game
a game
right
of
now
jump
is
scares?
the big reveal that ends Chapter 2 is that Sammy is trying to sacrifice you to their ink god Bendy. He's clearly an occult worshipping these living, breathing cartoon characters. But in this case, truth is actually
it gives me Bioshock vibes. Maybe just the
design,
the game design.
Occult activity throughout the Fleischer Studio roster. In Betty Boop Is My Palm Red, we see Bimbo and Coco the Clown worshipping a shadowy witch figure. A shadow, mind you, that never gets referenced or explained. It's not a joke
shows
anyway.
up once.
They're just there, bowing to it, and presumably it gives Bimbo his fortune-telling powers. Then there's Betty Boop Red Hot Mama, where a fireplace suddenly, for literally no reason, transforms into the literal mouth of hell.
Why?
Also,
and then she walks into it?
Every Betty Boop cartoon requires a scene that shows her with some sort of strong backlight, so you can see her legs through the dress. I mean, come on, guys, find a magazine or something. Here we all thought that anime was creepy. But perhaps the single most disturbing, bizarre, inexplicable example of this is in the cartoon Bimbo's Initiation, where our lovable dog Bimbo gets locked
Is that where the
in sewer
term
by
bimbo
Mickey Mouse,
comes from?
Max clearly showing his grudge against Disney there, when all of a sudden he's confronted with a bunch of cultists. No joke, actual cultists asking him,
"Wanna be a member? Wanna be a member?"
No.
When Bimbo refuses, he's suddenly tortured with all sorts of horrific punishments, including a knife cutting through a spinning room to stab him repeatedly.
"Wanna be a member? Wanna be a member?"
No.
And they continue to do it.
He's asked to join until he's finally had enough punishment and says yes, at which point it's revealed that the cult is made up entirely of Betty Boop.
Why are there so many of them?
What the? What? So are you
So
saying
there's, like,
Bendy
replacement
created
ones?
a bunch of clones? That there's a cult that worships
So
herself?
that's her as
Or
a
maybe you're
dog
saying that when
with
a
the
stranger
ears.
asks you to join a cult, you should absolutely say yes because there's gonna be a hot girl in it.
No,
for
don't
you.
do that. Do not take that
Regardless,
advice.
it's weird
Do
and
not.
it's creepy,
Do not
and I
pass
have
go. Do
no
not collect
idea how people
$200.
back in the early 30s found it funny, but I think this scene
Not
gives us
funny.
a really strong indication of what's going on in Bendy and the Ink Machine. So in the words of Good Mythical Morning, let's talk about
North
that.
Carolina,
Between
let's
the
go.
gritty
Well,
setting,
Matt's also
the
from North
failing
Carolina.
company, the desire to bring cartoons to life, the mischievous
That's
white glove
kinda crazy.
mascots and matching female
They're
partners,
from,
a
Blues
boss with a
Creek,
chip
which
on his
is
shoulder, and the
around where
recurring
Matt,
cult
I
imagery,
think, lives.
there
I think he
is
lives in
little
Raleigh.
to no doubt that Max Fleischer is, in fact, the real-life Joey Drew. So then what? What's all this mean for the game? What's the point of doing
is
this?
this
Well,
theory
if
right?
This theory proves true.
Is it?
First,
I don't
we'll
know.
see Alice take center stage as
He
the
does
game
have a lot
goes
to work on.
Like Betty Boop, we'll hear about how her popularity skyrocketed, surpassing Bendy, and you can expect
And Bendy's gonna
Bendy
have
probably won't
upset.
be too happy about that, creating some infighting between
I
the
guess it's supposed to be like a
characters
teaser.
with you stuck
It's gonna,
in
like,
the
wait
middle.
for chapter
I'd also
3
hazard a
where
guess that we haven't
he's gonna
seen the last of that
get
cult,
out of the
just like
ink
we saw in
room.
Bimbo's initiation.
ink
How
machine.
intense would it be to learn that these characters are using the ink machine to replicate themselves, building a cult consisting of hundreds of horrifying Bendy and Alice clones? And lastly,
Well,
just like Sammy is an ink
well,
monster,
maybe Alice
it
is
wouldn't surprise me to
evil.
see Joey Drew as the real identity behind the first Bendy, fused together with his creation.
And
by
then they're just
Peter's
like,
ink
oh, let's
machine,
continue to make
literally
more.
Consumed with his desire to
sense.
bring cartoons to life, just like Max Fleischer desired to bring his
Bring a cartoon to
life,
life and
was
it's just
eventually
like,
consumed by his desire
copy,
to
paste,
get
copy,
revenge
paste, copy,
on
paste.
Disney.
Huh.
I guess we'll just have to wait until chapter 3 is ready to find out. But in the
I'm guessing that's what the next video is gonna be
remember,
about.
That's just a theory. A game
Wow.
theory. Thanks for watching.
Okay, Matt.
Wanna be
Oh. Wait, I don't know if that was actually in the video or not. Oh, no. It might have been. I don't know. I goofed it. I wasn't sure if it was going to start the next part because YouTube does this thing where it'll automatically play the next video, and if it plays like 1 second of the video and you back out of it, it'll have a red bar going across saying that, oh, you already seen the entire video, when I haven't. But, I did not know that little neat history thing about animation and like when it started and the days and the dates and stuff. I also didn't know anything about Bendy and the Ink Machine. It's a jump scare game, which is terrifying. I do not like scary games. You can see my attempts at playing Five Nights at Freddy's, which was certainly inexperienced. But this is, I guess, the new game theory franchise that we're doing. Well, 6 years ago, 5 years ago, 5 years ago, 1 year ago, 4 months ago. What in the world? What is the game? Why is there a 4-year gap here? Okay. I'm sure maybe they came out with a sequel or another chapter or a DLC. I don't really know, but I do look forward to reading your comments. I really hope you enjoyed this video. But until the next one, take care and cue the music.
We were playing